when I experience an obstacle or challenge, I'm going to move past it. I'm going to shatter that glass ceiling and I'm going to keep going.
It hurts to smash a glass ceiling.
Wow, we literally have to be superheroes to walk through this life.
While I might have been the first, I pray that I'm not the last.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon.
I'm still in lovely Cleveland.
Yeah.
And what a great place to spend the summer. How are you? Where are you?
I'm doing great. Got the kids all off to camp. It's it's 9:37 here. So that was quite the adventure. We have kind of an intense week for that, but I survived.
Yay.
So here we are. Really excited about today. And what'd you have for lunch?
Well, I haven't had lunch yet. I had oatmeal for breakfast.
Oh my goodness.
But I am 3 hours ahead. I am really excited to talk to Dr. Pat about what we should be having for lunch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she is she's going to be a force to be reckoned with. She wrote a book called Why Are You Sick, Fat and Tired? Why are you sick, fat, and tired? So I think that we're all going to find a few of the answers to our questions today.
Yeah.
So
she has a lot of expertise around that, and she is highly energetic, and she has got some stories. We had a really, really great chat last week as we were preparing for this. So just,
So should we tell our listeners about who's coming up next week? I think it's Annie Gallagher, right?
Annie Gallagher. Yeah. So Annie is one of the, I would say, coordinators, administrators, and speakers for Wisdom 2.0. Yes. And I met her there back. When was that? When was Wisdom 2.0?
Yeah, March.
March. Yeah. Yes. Gosh, that seems like a long time ago. But anyway, she and I have had some great conversations, and she has really, really joyful and unique perspective on living life and on overcoming challenges and being a woman of influence. So
yes. And we had Donna Romanek drop on our podcast. So if you missed the live stream and you want to listen in the car, it's at blueberry.net, right? Donna Romanek. Yeah. She is the director at the ACT Theater.
Yep. Yes. Yep. And then we have Fran Hale this Thursday coming out.
Yes.
So the audio from that live stream interview.
Yeah, she's the director of marketing and creativity or something like that for Brave Bison, right?
Brave Bison. That's
so
right.
Yes, we have a lot of interesting things going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did we get a hold of Pat initially?
She reached out to us. She felt like she was aligned, and she's a woman of influence, and she likes to help people be a better version of themselves. So we had an initial conversation, and I was like, okay. So then remember, we had a cancellation for this week, and she's been so flexible and just ready to jump in.
Yeah, and we are very grateful for that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, without further ado, let's bring on Dr. Pat Boulogne.
Yes.
Here I am.
Hello, Dr. Pat. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really am doing great. I'm very thankful.
It's so wonderful to have you. Can you tell our listeners where you are and what you're up to today?
Well, I'm on the East Coast, and I am packing up to head back up north. And for doing that, I'm actually coming right by you in Cleveland, ultimately for about 5 or 6 days. And so I'm doing this kind of clockwise trip. And I'm going to visit a friend of mine who was just a bestseller and for empowering women. And so she's having a birthday party tomorrow night. So I'm trying to get out of here a day earlier. And pack up stuff and thinking, where is everything?
Yeah.
And what do I need for 5 weeks? So
where will your home base be for 5 weeks?
It's going to be in my car. I'm leaving from here, going to Jim Thorpe, and then going up to Northeast Pennsylvania, which I never knew was a city before. And then venturing across, the upper state New York, visiting some places like Skinny Atlas, which isn't, spelled the way it sounds. And this, in the Finger Lake area, and then stopping in Hillsdale before I go back into my trip in Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. So you are going to be on the move. How exciting.
3,000 some miles, I figure. I just
Oh my
Wow.
goodness!
with my
Wow.
coin toss number for that.
Yeah, that's quite the trip, and it's exciting because you can free flow where you need to go, right?
Right.
So I would love for you to tell our listeners, like, how do you describe what your job is when someone says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?"
Ooh. Well, I usually say that, I help women, female executives, entrepreneurs, influencers, and leaders get stronger, have more balance. And I help them do that so they can get more out of their day, not be exhausted at the end of the day or depleted. And I do it with superior nutrition recommendations and other wellness initiatives.
Wow.
Yeah.
We all need a little dose of that right now after having gone through the last year, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just like sometimes you just look at some food and you think about like, oh, maybe I don't have to buy organic. And then you think about, I did I met somebody in a grocery store and I looked at her and I said, broccoli's like dating. And she said, what? I said, broccoli's like dating. You have, organic, you have, and you have this non-GMO thing, but they both look the same. I said, but it's like dating. It's like dating the good guy who wants to have your back, who wants to feed you and wants to make sure that you get enough sleep and make sure that you're well taken care of. Or you have the bad guy, who looks good on the outside, but when it comes time to deliver, there's nothing there. And so, and keeps you out at 2:00 in the morning, that type of thing. And she asked me, which is the organic one? And I said, this one. And she grabbed it and walked away. She goes, thanks. She goes, now I can date. She goes, date in peace and quiet.
I love it.
It was so funny. It's just like, I put the
hilarious.
broccoli down and I had to go pick another organic broccoli up.
What a great metaphor.
That's that's great.
Pat, how did you get into this kind of work?
Well, it started, a long time ago. I had a friend of mine who said, oh my God, you have all the prerequisites, to be a chiropractor. You don't want to be a medical doctor because when you're a medical doctor, you're only working in one paradigm. And then he goes, and being a chiropractor, you have so many other opportunities to help people really get well. And I said, I don't know about that. And so we had this big conversation around it. And I said, no, I'm not going to be a chiropractor. And 2 weeks later, I should never have said that, but 2 weeks later, I hurt my shoulder when I was working because I was in school and doing a coverage work for my, like an independent study. And I was working at University of Michigan Hospital and I was, applying for MBA program at school. And I hurt my shoulder. I went in to see this chiropractor. I said, I might as well try it. And then what happened was that when I was there, I thought, this guy's an idiot. Just as it crossed my mind, I go, if he can do this, so can I. And I left there and I applied for school and I never looked back. To my father's chagrin, he said, if you go, you're on your own. I said, I'm going. And I went to Europe before I traveled a little bit before because I wanted to get that in before I started studying my brains out. And, and I went there and I just have had, I met my husband there. My ex-husband's an incredible chiropractor and his father was a chiropractor. He was an osteopath. He was a physical therapist. So there was such a rich background, for him that he brought to the table. And we were very good business partners. We just weren't great, marriage partners. And he had, it's just like we bought an office that was underserved and we grew it and we were very popular. And, we had, I never said no to anybody in paying. I don't know if he did, but I didn't. So people could always get in, and I was very accessible. And I also never wore a doctor coat or a doctor kind of clothes in my office because I wanted little kids not to be scared. I wanted them to see me as a person, and they were, they always stole my heart. We were going, Dr. Pat, when they came in to say, we're here, and I said, oh my God, can you teach older men how to do that? It was a really special opportunity to do that, but I never looked back. And then I specialized in sports medicine and because I always was some level of an athlete. And then functional medicine came around, lifestyle medicine came around, and those things fit me like gloves. And I studied, and I have a master's and a diplomate status in acupuncture. But the reason why I went in that route is because I wanted to be able to tie in right side, left side.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have enough tools that if someone came to me, I could say like, hey, you know what, this is what I know, but it doesn't mean I don't know what I don't know. It just means that we have to figure out what it is in case we hit a block, you know, and you know, here's where you can go to get better information, or here's where I would go if I wanted better information about this, because you can't fix everything. Right. And so good.
So I have a question about how did your early upbringing kind of influence how you are at this moment with everything that you're serving and doing and your passions and how you show up in the world? What early development allowed you to do this?
Well, my father, back to him, you know, always said I could do anything I wanted to do. And so I always tried to stretch the borders for that. Like I ran away when I was 4 years old because I wanted to go play in the playground because I went like, wow, they have a merry-go-round. I mean, today you would never see those things because they're dangerous and there's liability with that. But like if you fell off the monkey bars and you broke your arm, you're on your own back then. So I went, you know, and I did things like that. You know, when I played doctor, I was always the doctor. I was never the nurse. I was never dead. You know, I didn't die, and I was never the person who was injured. I was always the one with the answers. And so, you know, my father was, you know, was very, my father was very, I got a dog behind me that's got a chain on it that when he starts drinking water, it sounds like he's bringing home the cows. And so just wanted to move it so it wouldn't be so disturbing. So when I went, you know, it was a whole process of the education, like behind that. My mother was much more, you know, concentric. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, I never want to be like that. You know, I want to be open. Like she could talk to anybody, but she was so scared of going in a car on a trip, you know, anywhere, you know, that she limited what her world was like. And I went, no, I want to step on the outside of the world. And you know, things that influenced me that really got me moving was the lady next door, the Italian Spanish woman, who just said, when you grow up, you're going to have 5 kids. You're going to drive a Monte Carlo. Nothing that's wrong with having 5 kids or driving a Monte Carlo. And you're going to live in a house just like your mother does. And I just went, I don't think so. And when there's a street that was at the very end that you could see, and that street went all the way down to Florida. It was Business I-75. And and I said, one day I'm getting on that road and I'm going south and I'm not coming back.
Wow.
And when the day that I left, my brother bought my mother's house from her when she moved to a different type of housing. You know, I drove from that house out of there on the road and I went south to go to chiropractic school.
Wow.
Wow. So you're a person of vision.
Pardon me?
You're a person of vision.
Yeah. I mean,
like a long time ahead.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, I can see things that before they happen. And, you know, and I also sometimes where, you know, might be described as clairescence, where, you know, where I'm listening to something and I'll hear a voice. Like that's how my book ended up getting written. And, you know, or the idea for that being started and being, you know, fostering that.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. It's like following what that universe has in store for you, just listening really well, right?
Yeah, you know, and you have to be open to like signs and be able to read in between the lines, or what I call the writing on the wall. And I really didn't. And the thing that how the University of Michigan Hospital fit in there when I was doing that independent study was I never saw anybody get well the whole time that I was there. And, you know, I periodically went through the cancer ward, but the only ward that I liked going to was like the maternity ward. You know, you had people who were, you know, suddenly that were very serious, going like, ooh, do, 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 do. You know, they're looking so cute, you know, and singing, you know, and things like that. So it was always, you know, I'm like, God, I said, if I ever become a regular doctor, you know, I want to be an OBGYN doctor because I want to see, you know, I want to see that what's the result of, you know, 2 people and a lot of love, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you talked about being a chiropractor and then functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, and some different moving forward in your understanding and maybe the breadth of your understanding of medicine and how it impacts people's lives. How did you go from there to where you are now now you have this more, from my perspective, looking at, from our conversation in social media, more expansive understanding of health and wellness. And how do they get you to a point where now you're now coaching individuals in wellness? What's the connection there?
Well, I had a teacher and mentor in in chiropractic, and he always said, "What you got." He was from Utah. "What you got isn't what you got." And I say to him, like, I always look just like you. And so he goes, no, sometimes you have, and in Chinese medicine too, you have so many symptoms, but it's not the root problem.
Mm-hmm.
You're expressing some level of health. And so when I started asking those questions, the next thing came is you got to be a CSI detective. And and if you really, really, really want to help somebody, you've got to first fix the structure's function. And then you can start fixing other things like emotions. You can start fixing things that, what really causes people to get sick, So the three basic things are trauma, because trauma creates inflammation. And the first inflammation that human beings experience is when they're born. 9 out of 10 children have some type of cervical damage. And that's the reason why you see a chiropractor after you're born. Your parents should take you. And then you have toxins. And in today's world, we have so many toxins from various places, from the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the food that you eat, the cleaning chemicals that are in your house, and, in the air. And the air you can't do too much about, but, you can live in places that have a little bit less, heavy toxicity, because we have a lot of exposure in this country and globally to heavy metals, and heavy metals are very, assimilable when they're in your food, and that creates a big problem. So you say, like, how did I get from that to that? When I was in my practice, and I finally decided to sell it because I did not want to live on Cape Cod for the rest of my life. And I moved in Boston. I just had this, it was, the timing was right, and I wanted to go up and I wanted to do more one-on-one, because I felt I could do a lot less work in shorter period of time instead of spreading it out over 2 or 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And so I started taking on private clients, and I called them, clients then, and because I wasn't diagnosing anymore. And I asked the people, it's just like, what do you call what I'm doing with you? And they said, you're a coach. You're coaching me. You're telling me how I can do it better, or you're mentoring me. Because I think a lot of times the function of a coach and a mentor crosses over. And so it's like, and I don't really care. I just like, let's just get you, from point A to point Z, and tell me what we got. Because you got to have something to work with. If you got something to work with, then you can make those changes and those shifts, especially. I mean, and the other thing that, has always made the hair on the back of my neck stand up is when I've used to, when I'm presenting a program to a woman. I was helping a doctor start his practice, who was more in a functional medicine style practice, and, after I finished explaining this woman, say, hey, this is where you're at, because they test, you don't guess. So when I'm looking at her stuff, I said, this is, I go, perfect for you. And I don't see where this is going to take, in my experience, because I had 38 years of experience at that time. I go, how, X, Y, and Z amount of time, if you do what you say that you want to do, and you want to get the results that you want to get. And so she goes, oh, my husband needs this more than I do. I'm going, are you kidding me? And, or your parents, but I hear that consecutively. I never heard a guy say my wife needs this more than I do, ever. And, just as a point, but women are always, where we're so encompassing. We want to take care of our best friends. We want to take care of our girlfriends, our husband, the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, the whole family, and the kids. And then all of a sudden we end up with nothing. We end up with absolutely being depleted, tired all the time. And you think about doing self-care, you're going, oh, I'm going to take that bubble bath tonight. And then when like 9 o'clock rolls around, you're going, I'd rather just go to sleep. It's just, and it doesn't really happen. Or you take a lot more shortcuts. You don't shortcut your kids' food, but you shortcut your own food. I have a client that was a VP as an insurance company, and she was always so super busy. She had 2 kids. And she said at 2:45 in the afternoon, this internal alarm clock went off and said, oh my God, what do I need to feed my kids tonight? Okay, like, what do I got in the refrigerator? And she would start going through that process and thinking, okay, I've got to stop to buy these groceries. I've got to do this. What am I going to make that's so nutritious for my kids? Because she wanted them to think better, feel better, and move better all the time. And she had to transition from being the work person into being the mom person. And so she found that it was a big struggle for her to sometimes make that shift, because she had one last thing to do at work and didn't have time to decompress, like go walk on a beach. That was when I was on Cape Cod and that type of thing. So there was this, I see that prevalent in a lot of women, and a lot of women think like, oh, I can't ask for help. I can't, I can't do this because I don't have time for it. But the reality is you better make time for it, because if you don't have your health, you're not going to be able to do anything.
So I have a question about that, because I do agree with you that we kind of prioritize ourselves last. Is there a moment in time where you kind of hit the wall and you had to say, hey, listen, what I'm doing isn't working? Is there a pivotal moment that you just said, hey, I'm in a dark moment here and I have to switch gears? Can you?
Well, that'd be most recently. No, I'm pivoting because I have been trying to, as a chiropractor, we treat everybody. We treat a kid, we treat it, the whole family, the grandparents and everything. When you coach, the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around and pivot has always been, I don't want to ever say no. I don't want to say no to somebody who's not necessarily in my niche that I can serve, or I can't serve 150%. And tell them like, hey, I think you should, but if I were you, this is what I would do. And this is who I would go talk to. And so, and then get back to me. If you can't find somebody to do that, then get back to me and I will find someone for you. I've always said that no matter where I've been at. But that transitioning from, the difficulty is transitioning from being, not a trusted authority, where people don't necessarily know you, or don't know that you know that you know, and what you don't know, you don't know, and that you practice common sense medicine. That doesn't necessarily come across in a picture or even on a website. So having the ability to have a conversation with somebody and talk to them about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and how to move forward, from where they're at, like, where am I stuck? Like, how do you make sense of all that stuff so that you can get unstuck and you can move forward and you can have tangible results, in whatever form it is, whatever it is that in your head, so you can move forward. That's important. That's and just keep on thinking, okay, so here's a block. How do you get over it? And that's one of my superpowers, is that, I don't ever let anything stop me. I'm incredibly persistent. So
how do you create the boundary around getting depleted? Like, how do you do that?
Well, one of the things that I do, I've had patients when I have my practice, and ask me like, how do you do it? You're here at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you get home, you leave here at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. How do you do it? And I said, well, what I do is, I eat well. That's the first thing that I look at every day. Because I have control about what goes in my mouth. When I go to buy groceries, if I'm thinking, oh, I think I want some ice cream, I might walk down the ice cream aisle, but I don't buy it. And, and I rarely ever go into a real grocery store, and if I do, I stay on the outside of it, unless I have to buy a cleaning supply of some sort. But then, I usually just order a lot of that stuff online, because I can get the quality and the quantity of the green type of cleaning products that I want. So that's what, in managing that, that's the most key first thing that anybody can do, is they can manage what they put in their mouth. And, and I used to, when I was probably 14 years old and about 5'8", I weighed 150 pounds. I weigh 155 pounds now, but when, and that weight's never really changed from when I was 13, I just grew taller. But the thing is that, when I decided that I wanted to lose weight and committed to it, because, I wanted to be able to move. I wanted to be able to, be active. And I didn't find that even at the age of 13. I started doing specific exercise. I walked back and forth to school, and then I ate. I thought, oh, am I hungry? And if I wasn't hungry, I didn't eat it. I started creating that discipline at that age, which serves me well when I'm explaining to somebody like, hey, do as I say because this is what I do. It's like,
yeah, so it's a
right?
mindfulness practice of
Yeah.
asking yourself that, as opposed to just an automatic habit. Is to create mindfulness around that. And that's hard because a lot of times throughout our day, we're on autopilot, just going from task to task to task and putting food in our mouth or snacks in our mouth. And it takes a lot of mindfulness, a lot of knowing yourself.
You have to trust yourself too. So that trust, like, thinking like how you do anything is how you do everything. Well, if you don't trust yourself, you're not going to trust somebody else. So if you want to be in a relationship, you better trust yourself first before you trust somebody else. And you have to okay, so how do I take care of myself? How can I do it better? What can I do? Because I have there's a rule of one that says like start out with just drinking 1 glass of water a day, taking, walk around 1 block, doing one specific thing that that you can be successful at and reward yourself for those successes. It's so important to do that, because if you don't, sometimes we don't have somebody to pat us on the back and say like, wow, that Josh, that was so cool that what you did, blah, blah, blah. And, and people deserve to be acknowledged, for their genius. Because I think everyone's a genius. You just got to feed that genius so that gets expressed, no matter what it is.
Have you faced challenges specifically because you're a woman who is pushing against systems and pushing against ways of thinking that are broad? When you're out there, you are making difference in the world. You're making difference in people's lives. Have you gotten pushback because you're a woman?
Sure. I just ignore them. There's, somebody gave me a really nice compliment one time, and they said, their sister, she was an astrologer, and someone gave me this gift, and she said, when everyone else quits, you see what you look at it as like, this is not a bad thing that happened. What did I learn from this? And moving forward. So when I interviewed with the NFL for being a chiropractor, it's just like, they didn't have any women chiropractors at that time. This is years ago. And so they were looking for male chiropractors to, work with them. And of course I didn't get selected, and which was fine, but I looked at it as like, okay, so I didn't get it. I'm not supposed to have it. But you can't take that experience away, or being able to tell a story about that. I one time, ended up interviewing with the NFL. This is like centuries ago, because I had certification in sports medicine. So I met all their criteria, except that, they were looking for men and male chiropractors as opposed to women chiropractors. And I just said, all right, you're missing the best. And I just moved on. I didn't, you can't take that stuff personally, because if you do, you'll get stuck and you'll never move forward. And it's just a learning experience. When I travel, and I always tried to keep this energy around me all the time. But when I travel, I just figured what happens, happens. Like if I miss a train or if I do this, it's not the end of the world, and just like, okay, so I didn't get that one, so let me get to the next one. And there's so many times that I have met or made cross paths with such really interesting men and women, and had such really incredible experiences I never would have had if I would have been on that, if I would have made, the decision not to give my ticket up once in London. I met these 2 people who ended up being my very, very, very dear friends, and they lived in Australia. But we hung out. We left London and we went to Paris together. And because everyone was short on money, we just got a big room with a bunch of beds in it, and, hung out in Paris. They came to Amsterdam and someone stole their purse and their money. So a friend of mine in Amsterdam put them up for a week. You can't, it's just like, things just keep on leading into, like the next thing is just like, you just go, okay, so that happened. So how can you fix it?
Yeah. It's back to that openness that you discussed earlier, is just allowing things to unfold and moving and grooving with it, as opposed to trying to control it. Right.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, and then, if you ask yourself when something doesn't work out the way that you want it, you go like, okay, was I trying to do that? Like a little too hard? How much did it, how much writing on the wall did I need saying it's not, this is not for me? And if it's not for me, perhaps it's for somebody else who always can be referred to that same point in time. And that I like to share.
I like
So,
that.
so tell me a little bit about how you handle conflict when people don't agree with you, or they're telling you you're wrong, or you have a conflict or a difference of opinion. Tell me a little bit about that, because women a lot of times are trying to hone that as their, I think everybody is actually, not just women. I think men have those challenges too. So tell me about conflict.
Well, I'm not scared of it, for starters.
Mhm.
And my experience has been when someone tells me, I think a lot of people, when they start talking about conflicts, they don't know how to communicate, is they put the end of the story before, and you have no clue what they're talking about, which makes you feel confused, which creates chaos. And if you are confused and you're chaos and you're trying to figure out, like, what the heck are they talking about? Then you can't, it's very difficult to address whatever it is that is the issue.
Mhm.
And so, and this like time in the last year and a half, I've seen that so many times when somebody has like just loses it for whatever reason. I'm like, okay, so wait a minute, what exactly is bothering you?
Mhm.
And if it's something that, I can fix, then let's do it. If it's something that you need to fix, let's do it. But there's a better way, a faster and simpler way to get to have end results and get unstuck than starting with chaos. 'Cause there's already enough chaos around us in these
Mhm.
days and times that we've experienced. So my approach, on if like everything's perfect in the perfect world is going, what's the issue? Or like, hey, and the other thing is like asking whoever is involved, if there's somebody else involved, is even your higher self, is this a good time to have a conversation about X, Y, and Z? And being very, very precise in exactly what that is. Then you can say like, no, or yes, or if it is, it's just like, let's talk about that in a couple hours. Can you just bullet me what issues you're having so that we can address them?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then taking a look at sometimes when those come up, just say like, well, is there ever a time in your life? Because I do this with clients. Is there ever a time in your life that you ever felt like this before? Because it's not
Mhm.
necessarily me,
Mm.
it's not
Mhm.
necessarily them. It might be an experience that they had that they buried deep emotionally in their blood, brain, bone, or fat that is like trying to get out of there so that they can have more freedom in their thought and in their actions. And they
Mhm.
don't have this heavy hangover head cloud,
Right, right.
that's sticking with them. So I think
Mhm.
that when, I look at, conflict, or, I'm always looking at like, okay, so, I mean, even if when I've been pulled over by a cop, I was like, they always, do you know what you did? I said, if I did, I said, I wouldn't have done it. I go, to get your attention. I go, but if you could tell me what it is, I can tell you if I did it or not. And so
Mhm.
a lot of times there's just like, some guy thought he saw me texting in my car. And all I did was pick my telephone up to see who it was, because my identifier on my screen, on my GPS screen, didn't say it, just had a phone number, and I didn't recognize the phone number. But when I explained that to him, he went like, oh, okay. That
Mhm.
makes sense.
So asking some good questions and
Yeah.
stepping back away from the intensity of the situation. Have you always dealt with conflict that way?
Except for with my brother.
Family.
Forget about the family
Right.
part.
Yeah,
Mhm.
take that off.
Well, because, a lot of times, you have to, if you can understand why someone made a decision, and ask that, as opposed to jumping to conclusions.
Mhm.
It's then you get so much farther. It doesn't take that energy away from you, that sucks your energy and your life out of you. So you're
Mhm.
thinking like, oh, why do I always get a cold? Like after, I have a conversation with so and so. And maybe there's just people who are like, sandpaper in your life,
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
are toxic for you, that you need to recognize that those are toxic people for you. And then you need to stay clear of them. You know,
Mhm.
like when you talk to them, the people who, when you get off the telephone, you're looking at the time and you're watching the clock, which
Mhm.
even goes slower when you're watching it. It's like, I got to get off this phone. And, or, just say, so tell me what the end of the story is, or like helping. Sometimes in my coaching, I do accountability coaching, and I was in the process of helping a friend of mine and also an ex-client of mine, help get his book to where it needs to go. And so a lot of times it was just working through emotion of like, this person did this, and that sense of being overwhelmed, because when people are overwhelmed, they don't make good decisions. When they're confused, they don't make good decisions. So when people are, perpetually listening to the media and listening to like their friends, and there's a third party somewhere in that line of communication that is swaying somebody from being able to make, concrete, solid decisions and be stronger and be healthier. Because that energy takes that, sucks the life right out of you sometimes.
I want to take you back to a comment that you made, because I'm still pondering it. If you meant it or it was just a phrase, when you said it's stored in your blood, brain, bone, or fat.
Yeah, I was just in that too.
Is that just a phrase, or do you really think that people's past experiences get stored in their body somewhere? Because I do believe that we have emotional patterns that get stored in aspects of our body. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
It does. And how that manifests, there's a technique in chiropractic called TBM. And there's also another technique that's called NET. So NET is neuro emotional training, and TBM is total body modification. And so Dr. Frank and total body modification, a mentor of mine, the CSI person, right? He always said, you've got to take a look at what you got, and then you got to go deeper. So when people, have that perpetual, like all this crap going on in their life, and for them to be able to work with that, a lot of times we just bury it. We're in denial. And so that's God energy has got to go someplace. So when I've had people who, they've tried everything under God's green earth to like lose weight, to think better, whatever. And then we start talking in our line, of conversation. And then in that fourth or fifth time that we talk, there's always some edginess with that. And, I asked this woman one time, I said, so why do you think you've got this red splotch on your leg? She goes, I don't know. It wasn't there when I was 17. But when we started, cutting into like, it's just like, so what's really going on? And, what happened? Who have you seen in the last week? Because something triggered you, and when we have those old triggers that come up, we want to do comfort food type things, which aren't necessarily always healthy for you. But she had an encounter because, she had family that came in from out of state and everyone got together, which really, it was agitating to her, but she was internalizing it. So I go, you've always done it, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So let's talk about where that comes from. Well, the interesting thing is that when we were talking, I asked her at one point in time, do I remind you of your mother or your father? And she said, right now, you remind me of my father. So, and then we talked about that. So when we start after that, a couple of weeks later, she said, that spot on my leg isn't so red anymore. And it looks like it's a little smaller. I'm going to measure it, and it eventually ended up shrinking up to maybe like an inch as opposed to 6 inches, something like that.
Wow.
And so, and then she sent me a picture when she went to Costa Rica with her arms up in the air like this, saying, she goes, oh, Dr. Pat, she goes, I haven't felt this good since I was 30 years old. And she was 52. Wow. So it's just like releasing a lot of that, is good. And in Chinese medicine, they talk about people's and their emotions. So there's people who have excess personalities and people who have deficient personalities. The person, and you're familiar with acupuncture where people use cupping, right? So my teacher, Dr. Shu in school always said that people who have big reactions to cupping, are people who have excess. Being heavy is excess, and people take some of those emotions and, eat themselves into that size. So, but when you put the cup on them, they have these, they bruise, they have these like big red splotches all over the place. And people who are deficient, you put a cup on them, and it's like it goes away in 20 minutes. And whereas the person who's very deficient type of diagnosis, meaning that it doesn't mean that you're lacking something. It just means it's the way that your body responds to stuff. You don't hold things on you. So that goes like the people who have the ability to just let roll off their shoulder. That's more of somebody who has an ability to be more like a deficient type of personality, because, you can they're the ones that really like heavy massage. Like, can't you go any deeper? My finger's already through your leg. I can't go any farther than that, because they respond better to that. So, I think that people can put, those emotions, because thoughts are incredibly powerful. That's, I didn't say it before, the 3 T's that make people sick, but thoughts can undo anything good that you do to get rid of toxins, and anything that you get to rid of the trauma, because it's ruminating. You toss and turn. You wake up the next morning, you're going, why is my back killing me? It's just like, I was a fish out of water last night, it's just in flapping around. And, when you can't get a handle on the thoughts, you've got to get a handle on the thoughts. It's just mandatory. Because if you don't, you're going to become one of the statistics in upcoming surging mental wellness issues that are happening in this country right now. And you've got to eat well, because the gut brain connection with depression and anxiety and panic attacks there's direct proportional relationship to what goes in your mouth. So I help people, get past that, and so that they can figure out, like, what is it, or what can I do when I have that feeling? So it's not something that's reactive for you anymore. It's more of a memory, and I have special techniques to be able to do that with people.
Wow, that's
who's your my mind is just going and going and going, because I'm tracking with all that you're saying, and this yeah. But I want to digress slightly to you've spoken to different mentors you've had and supporters. Who would you say your greatest supporter is?
I mean, as far as an outside person?
Answer it the way you want to answer it.
I think my greatest supporter is me. And because I believe in myself, and I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe that God gave me the ability to help people get well.
I didn't expect that. I like that.
Well, my mother she had an accident that rendered her in bed until she died, and she was in a transport van and it flipped, and her wheelchair wasn't secure. So, she would just, my parts of my family would say, like, oh, whatever, it's just like, we got to pray for grandma. I said, no, you got to pray for the person who God gave the wisdom to come in here and help her. You want that person to walk through the door. You want that person to, tell her to, like, this is where you're at. This is where you have the capacity of going right now. Let's take baby steps in order to get there, or let's take a giant step. Let's just move. And look at what's possible, but if you take my second choice would be, who had the biggest influence on me, was my mentor, and who's no longer here. He passed exactly to the date 1 month after my mother, and they all knew each other, but he used to always, like, teach me about, never call your parents if you're in trouble, call me. And that when I was traveling or whatever, he goes, don't call them, and call me, I'll come get you. And he was an executive, he was a CEO of an import-export company. And he always had the ability to pull anybody in a conversation. Nobody disliked this guy, ever. And but he was incredibly the most gracious person I've ever met in my life, and very full of wisdom. He would just say, all plans are subject to change. If they're changed, they weren't meant to be, move forward. Make a lateral move forward. So, and I hung out with him, and I learned how to sing every Irish song, I swear to God there is. He was Irish, and he liked going to listen to Irish music and folk music. And so if you went in a car with him, that's exactly what you did. Any place.
How did you meet him?
They moved in across the street from me. You talk about things being serendipitous, right? So they moved in across the street from me right when my parents got divorced. And so, and they never locked their doors. They said, I remember them, bragging about living in New York City and never locking their doors, the whole time they lived there, and I learned when my mentor passed from his brother-in-law, they've been friends since, grade school. And he said that, oh, we had a bet, that whoever's house got broken into, the other person had to not go through the insurance company, but replace the whole house. And so they had to bet whoever did that, that's how they were, like, that was the bet that they made. So that, because they had this way of thinking, like, nobody's going to do that. I mean, he left his Porsche at Detroit Metro Airport with, the keys in it, and the ticket to get out, so if anyone's going to steal it, they had the keys, they had the ticket, they just had to pay for the car to get out, and I picked a lot of cars up in a lot of different airports when I've crossed paths with them. Like, oh, we'll leave you a car at the airport, and we'll just tell you where it's at. So he, and, I have traveled with him, and have done some really fun things. After he got divorced, we would take rides into downtown Detroit. And then he would say, Pat, you've got my wallet on you. Give that guy $20. I just was like, I go, you want me to open my purse, with where we're not in good areas, right? And I said, and to do this, he said, yeah. And then hop in the car, we'll get out of here. But he was just, and it was, he always had the luck of the Irish, always had the wind behind his back. And he always had, I can remember, coming out into the kitchen when I've had friends over and they were visiting at 4:00 in the morning going, you people need to go to bed. But he just loved to talk and loved to share knowledge. And he was very mindful, and he was, full of wisdom.
Yeah. What a blessing to have somebody like that in your life.
Yeah.
So, believing that you would be like that for someone else, what would be the advice you would give your we talked about this, your younger self, but prior to coming on live, you talked about meeting someone and seeing a younger version of yourself.
Yes.
What advice would you give that person, having lived the life you've led now? What would you tell your younger self?
Well, I did tell her, by the way, we were having this conversation one day, and she said, when I first met her, actually, and I was thinking like, God, I was just thinking, I'm going, I feel like I'm talking to myself, but 20 years ago. And she was going like, oh, I think I'm talking to myself with 20 years before me. I mean, like ahead of me. And so she sent me a cartoon of Wonder Woman, the new one. And I said, you're obviously thinking about yourself here. And she said, no, I was thinking about you. And I said, no, Linda Carter was the first Wonder Woman. and as such, but she has the get it done attitude. Everything's possible, and she had this when I was speaking with her. She was telling me about a personal problem that she was having. And she had, I said, it's okay, just say it. I said, when you say it, you own it. It no longer owns you. And then you can disperse that energy and you can move forward. And then you can move forward with in a blessing state of way, so that everyone around you there isn't that tension in the air, And she said, God, you get me. I was thinking the same thing, like, wow, you get me. I could just, there's just certain things that, that happen. So my younger version of myself, I would tell her not to stop doing what she's doing. Because she's brilliant. She was not that I'm brilliant, but she's like, she's got, she's able to, this is what I love doing too. I'm able to look at a puzzle and put the pieces of the puzzle together so that there's an end of story. And this is the direction I have to go to. In order to get there, I have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 10, but I have to do 10 first. And then being able to organize and do things like that, and just have that concept.
So tune into that strategic, futuristic mind.
Yeah, and also listen to yourself, because a lot of times we ask so many other people for their opinions that we forget who we are.
For sure.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you read that you're reading right now, or you listen to right now, that impacts the way you think or feel? Anything that you've read recently?
I have a coach right now that I'm working with. And he's kind of reminds me of my mentor. And he's Irish. And so and that root. And so I listen to, I like talking to him about concepts like here's where I'm stuck. How do I get out of here? And that type of thing. But, as far as reading something, I always think about, in the morning, I think about what I'm grateful for. And I look at when stuff happens, I think, okay, so, if I'm going to get upset about something, I want it to be something significant. I do not want it's not a BlackBerry on a floor, and so I want to, so I look at that, and I always say, when I hit a wall, my mantra that one of a coach I had in the past gave me was, I am positive, I'm going to read it. I am positively expecting great results no matter what I see in front of me. The universe is rearranging itself for my best and highest interest right now. So I've used that when I've been pulled over by the police when I'm speeding, and I don't get a ticket. And, and I just think okay, so it's you just, go with the flow, and have self-talk that's positive, You know, so when you think a negative thought, or because it happens to everybody, that you think a negative thought, like, oh, this is never going to work out. And you're going, well, why? Then the other person on this side says, well, why would that be? And then my lizard brain says, well, because. And I go, you got to come up with a better reason than that, or else you got to go off my shoulder. Bang.
Right.
You know, but I think that, you know, that for as like, you know, reading things, you know, I read in the morning for knowledge, and I read at night for pleasure, or I listen. Because I'm, you know, have books that I'm listening to. And I recently started to read a book or listen to a book that I read ages ago that I just like so much. I still like so much, surprisingly. And it was The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmerman Bradley. And it's King Arthur's court as told by a woman. And, you know, I just like, and, you know, certain things that happen there are going like, oh, I remember when they raised the veil, and, you know, of the mist, from when, and it's a great book just to have a good memory of, like, at a specific time and being in your power. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
Pat, what are you most hopeful about with regard to women in influence?
I think that, you know, what I'm most hopeful for women is I'm hopeful for women that they really do start taking the time, the energy, the money, and the direction to take care of themselves better. Because for me, and how I believe in my belief system is that when you heal yourself, you know, or hire the person to help guide you in that direction, you know, or work with you in that direction, then you heal those behind you, you know, because the DNA changes, you know, and you heal those around you, which to me is pretty contagious, who heals other communities around you. And then you're like, you know, you're the perfect flower that attracts the bees, you know, and the perfect, you know, and in your environment. So if you think good, you know, you feel good, and you like, you know, I usually say something like, you know, do good and have fun. If you do good and have fun, you can't speak anything bad. You know, and if you're having fun, you know, it's just like that laughter is so important, and that sociability. So, you know, I hope that women stay social. I hope that they take better care of themselves, so that they can, you know, move forward with confidence, you know, and get the confidence that they need, you know, because it's there. You know, sometimes it's buried because of whatever they bury it, but it's there. And if you can get the weight off of that, then you just
Right.
you're great.
Flourish. Right. Wow. That's a great way to end this morning's episode. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. You are just so full of insight, wisdom, and energy. I've just really enjoyed this hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's
been fun. Yeah. The time just flew by.
Yeah.
I love it. You know, it's just like it gives me a lot of pleasure to see people thrive. You know, and if I can help them, like, you know, show them, like, you know, oh, this is a different kind of vehicle. You don't have to have a key anymore. You just press the button.
Right.
You know, and then that paradigm shift happens, that the world's round and not square.
Yeah. Well, I know you have a website. Can you remind our readers what your website is?
Yeah.
I can. My website is healthteamnetwork.com.
Yes. That's
you know, and I have a lot of presence on LinkedIn, which I love.
Yes.
And over Facebook. And I'm on Facebook. I have a page. I have a group that's called Stronger Than Medicine, or Be Stronger Than Medicine, that I'll be opening up publicly in the month of August, probably the second to the end of the August and into the month of September, because I'm offering some webinars that are coming up shortly. And working on getting the right links so that they work. But the course in September is going to be Stronger Than Medicine. And what it does is it helps people not put the cart before the horse, you know, and to like look at what it is like. So I've got the horse, I've got the cart, you know, and you know, and I'm going in the direction that I need to go, and it's getting back to basics so that you understand, like, you know, because anything that happens, we always have to go back to basics. That's where we have to first look, and when you can do that, you can move forward with confidence.
Right.
It's like, watch me.
Well, fabulous. Well, we'll look forward to that course in September.
Thank you.
And
have a wonderful drive.
Have a great trip.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm probably the only person. I mean, I listen to the books, but I don't listen to music. I drive in a quiet car, Yeah, and
I
it's
can't
always
do that.
and that
Good luck.
well, if I start putting music on, then I start singing, and then nobody hangs out with me. I can get through traffic very quickly.
Yeah.
If my windows are down.
Right.
Well, thanks for
And then
taking the
so-
time,
Yeah.
Pat.
Thank
Oh,
you
you're
so
welcome.
much,
Thank you.
and have a safe trip of renewal and relaxation.
Yeah.
And hope you have a great trip. Keep in
Thank
touch with us.
You too. And it's just like if you're around next week, I'll be up near Cleveland.
I'd love to see you.
Yeah.
Let's
All right.
connect.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Wow, what a dynamo.
Yeah, I know. The exact same word came to my mind.
Nonstop.
She's like got the energy to make it happen, right? And so I think that there's something to that whole thing of feed your body well. I think we have to be more mindful of that. And, she kept coming back to that theme. And I do have some real strong beliefs that what we put into our body is really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a lot of social influence that's pulling us in an opposite direction.
And I like how she centered on women needing to carve time, and yet that's so challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she just hit it right on the head, that
Right.
being able to make space to take care of yourself.
Right.
My wife does a very good job with this, but it's a massive focus of hers,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't come easily. So
and it allows her to be better for her kids if she does. So it's this sort of like the snowball effect that we just keep forgetting, that it has to start with, that first commitment. So, well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much. And I will look forward to next week with Anna Gallagher.
That's right.
And Fran Hale on the
Thursday.
podcast. Yeah. So thank you so much.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.